Okay, that's Bears Talk from Beardown, Germany. Today we're talking English and not in German because we have a special guest here in our podcast. It's Adam Hoge, Bears Insider, live from Bourbonnais, from training camp of the Chicago Bears. First, I can say we, the Beardown Germany writers, are big fans of you, Adam, and we admire your daily work as the Chicago Bears Insider for WGN Radio, your show The Beat, and your podcast with your fellow Adam Jans. We are prepared for this interview and we don't hang to that plan, but I think we can start now. I ask you the first question and we have some small talk. Well, very interesting for us is how did that all start for you, the work as a Bears Insider?
Well, first of all, guys, it's great to be on in Germany. Very cool. I appreciate what you guys just said. Wow, that's a long story. But basically, when just growing up as a kid, I knew I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, and by the time I got to college, I went to the University of Wisconsin. That I wanted to be in sports journalism, and I managed to get an internship out of college at WGN Radio, and I ended up writing at CBS Chicago, and was at The Score, a different radio station in Chicago, and was covering college football and basketball, but in Chicago, you guys know it's all about the Bears usually. So eventually it was decided that we needed to put as much focus on the Bears as possible, and this is now my 7th season covering the Bears on a daily basis, and it's fun. It's kind of exactly what I always wanted to be doing. It'd be nice if they won more games. Because ever since I started covering the team, I started the year after they lost to the Packers in the NFC Championship game. So there have been 0 playoff appearances since I jumped on the beat.
Yeah, we hope it's going to be better the next seasons. So Adam, you are now at training camp. You're going to leave in 10 minutes. And so we want to know, what is it like to be in training camp in Bourbonnais? How can we imagine your days in training camp?
Yeah, it's a lot different down here than the rest of the regular season, which takes place at Hallis Hall in Lake Forest at the Bears facility. So, Bourbonnais is a lot different than Chicago, not too far away. It's about an hour south of the city, but it's, there's not a whole lot to do down here. There's a small college called Olivet Nazarene University where the Bears practice. The Bears have funneled a lot of money into this small liberal arts college, and they have, great athletic facilities as a result, because the Bears, as an NFL team, obviously need to have facilities that can
yes, of course,
adequately host them for training camp. So, I think I still buy into the idea of training camp as far as getting a team focused on the season. And I think it's important to kind of have a early grind where you're completely focused on football without any distractions, and go, the installation phase of your offense, defense, special teams is all very important to kind of set the tone for the rest of the season. But it's just on a daily basis. I mean, for me, it's wake up, get some work done, go to practice, do interviews, do the rest of the work, and then by the evening you go get dinner and maybe have a beer before you go to bed. For the players, it's definitely even more work. I mean, they're waking up, recovery, treatment, meetings, walkthroughs, practice, more meetings, and then and maybe have some time to relax right before bed. But there's very little downtime down here.
So it's a long day for the players.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah.
Good. When we are up by the players, how is the atmosphere around the campus? Trubisky told us 2 months ago that this might be a playoff team. Can you feel any spirit that is opposite to the last years? Is there any better atmosphere?
I guess I have 2 different answers for that. One, yes, I do. There's a little bit more excitement this year. And I would say the crowds, especially the last weekend, were bigger than the last couple. Last couple of years have been pretty down. Now, I think part of that is the Bears were holding some early practices, like 9 a.m., and it's kind of hard. If you're coming from the city, you're kind of got to battle rush hour traffic to get down to Birmingham by 9 a.m. So I think that really turned off maybe some fans, but also obviously they weren't winning games, and that has a huge impact too, and kind of, gets rid of the buzz a little bit. Now, it's not like I don't think the fans believe that this is a playoff team this year, but I do think the addition of Mitch Trubisky probably aided a huge crowd that showed up on Saturday. Specifically, it was the first padded practice, and you could just tell it's the biggest crowd I've seen now in a few years, and I think a lot of it had to do with Mitch Trubisky. But, I looking at this team, I expect them to be better. I do. They better be better. I mean, at this point, it's kind of win or else. But there does seem to be more depth, some more excitement at different positions, and I think it would be a stretch to say that it would lead to a playoff berth this year. But I could certainly see them hovering around 500 this season.
Okay, yeah. When you talk about Trubisky, or you said now to me that this might be a better than 500 team. You're now at training camp. What about the quarterbacks? Can you say us something about the development of Mitch Trubisky, or what's with Mike Glennon? Does he look as an NFL starter?
Yeah. Here's what I'll start with Glennon. I think that Glennon is in control of the offense. I mean, he seems, first of all, his teammates seem to love him. He's certainly got leadership qualities that you need at that position, and I think it is rubbing off on his teammates. I think from an execution standpoint, the offense has looked smoother when he's under center, but when he starts to throw past 15, 20 yards, it's been a little sloppy. I think he's probably still working out the kinks with some of these wide receivers. Yesterday was the best that the wide receivers have looked in camp, specifically Cam Meredith and Kevin White. Both put together pretty good practices and seem to be in sync with Mike Glennon. Now, with Mitch Trubisky, I think there's, in terms of just the smoothness of the offense, from gathering in the huddle to getting the play call to executing at the line of scrimmage in terms of your protections, and then almost everything pre-snap, and then including the snap, which we've seen some problems with the snapping under center and some botched snaps.
Yeah, the fumbling.
It's been a little sloppy with Mitch Trubisky. Now, in my opinion, though, that's all to be expected. I mean, this is a guy that didn't really do a whole lot of this at the college level.
Yes.
And is expected to learn all of this on the fly in front of fans that are here. And there's pressure involved, certainly, when you're the number 2 overall pick. So it doesn't really surprise me. Now, when he actually has the football in his hand and he's running out, certainly it hasn't been perfect. But there have been moments where you see the talent with Mitch Trubisky and why they picked him where they did. So I would say it's not like it has clicked and he looks amazing, but it also, I don't think there's anything to be completely alarmed about yet with Mitch Trubisky either.
Okay, that sounds good. You told us that the depth is more contested than the last years. Can you tell us something about some hard-fought battles in training camp or during preseason? Who do you think could be cut before the 53-man roster stands? Some big names? Some surprises?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about surprises this year is I think there's so many guys that you kind of know are on the bubble that I don't know that there would be, an enormous surprise. I guess I would have said maybe coming into camp that maybe a guy like Hronis Grasu from 2 years ago, third round pick from 2 years ago, would, I would have maybe a small question. But now that I'm here, I mean, he seems like he was having such a good camp last year before he got hurt that I just cannot see them giving up on him this soon. And it's not like he looks bad. He just is now a backup center, and he's probably limited sort of to that position. And usually with your backups, you like to have a guy who can play guard or center at that spot. So, if you're asking me for somebody that would actually like kind of shock me if it happened, I guess I would go that route. But I guess what I'm saying is I don't think he'll be cut. So I guess that's why it would be a surprise to me. And then the same thing, I would have maybe questioned Jonathan Bullard, last year's third round pick, but he looks a lot better. I mean, he looks pretty good down here in Bourbonnais so far. So I really can't see that happening. So it's really hard this year because almost everyone is on the bubble. I guess Kyle Fuller is a name that kind of pops out just because if he doesn't win a starting cornerback job, he doesn't really give you much value on special teams. And I know they tried to trade him in the offseason, and there really wasn't much interest. So he's still here. But again, Kyle Fuller right now through a week of practice looks like somebody who's good enough to be on this 53-man roster. He looks healthier, and he looks like a guy who should be kept around just for depth purposes, even if he doesn't give you a whole much on special teams. So it's kind of tough, but these are some of the positions where there are battles, and actually I would say there are battles at every single position except probably outside linebacker is the one room where you go, okay, these are probably the 5 or 6 guys that are going to be in the room when the season starts, and you kind of know who they are.
Okay, thank you. Do you have time for last question? Or
yeah, let's do one more. Sure.
Yeah. Okay. We've seen that you talked with some new coaches the last week, the last days. Can you tell us which distinctions do you see compared to their precursors? Do you see any preference of them to the last coaches? Maybe the running backs coach, Jordan Howard, now has a new running backs coach.
Yeah, and it's Curtis Modkins who comes in with a lot of experience in the NFL. Stan Drayton, the Bears' last running backs coach, was pretty popular and well respected on the staff. He takes a job at Texas.
Yep.
And so they bring in Modkins, who, like I said, has a lot of experience, and so I think it brings in a lot of credibility. Jeremiah Washburn is the new offensive line coach, who I think it's interesting. Josh Sitton yesterday was talking about the different techniques that maybe a new offensive line coach would come in and teach. And I thought he brought up a good point that, the techniques don't really change. It's really more so how coaches try to drill those techniques. I mean, for the most part, the coaches are all going to teach the same ways to block a guy. Might find different strengths and weaknesses within each player, but it's usually just the drills that the coaches use to drill those techniques in. So that's really the only thing that changes. And then I think the biggest coaching change that we've really been looking at the last 48 hours or so is Zach Azzanni, the new wide receivers coach. Because he has been he comes in with a very similar resume as Mike Groh, who was the Bears wide receivers coach 2 years ago. He's making a jump up from college where he was a recruiting coordinator in the SEC. So it's a very similar resume. Now, Mike Groh quickly became a respected NFL wide receivers coach, even though he's been with 3 teams now in 3 years. There's a lot. His name has been circulated in the NFL as someone that is getting a lot of respect. So we'll see what's going on with Azzanni. But Azzanni has been very kind of vocal about Kevin White and his, I think, very fair assessment that Kevin White seems to care a lot what was being written and said about him and whether or not he's a bust, and he seems to be sensitive to that kind of stuff. So Azzani's trying to keep that all away from him. So and that turned into a story this week that I think got sort of blown out of proportion nationally, and Kevin White didn't like that, So there's a little bit of a disagreement going on right there, maybe between those two. But the point I made in in what I wrote yesterday,
Yes.
is that he seems to be pushing the right buttons because Kevin White came out and had his best practice at camp yesterday. So it'll be an interesting relationship to watch going forward. I think that's right now the biggest storyline amongst the new assistant coaches.
Okay. Thank you very much, Adam. We've enjoyed it. Thank you for spending your time with us. Hopefully we can talk again later during the season and get an update of your opinions about the Bears.
Absolutely.
Yes, that would be nice. Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's pretty cool being on in Germany.